Welcome to the U of M Reinhardt Peony Garden. This is 2 weeks from what we saw it last time, and you can see that the peonies have grown really a lot. They're probably at least twice their size from what they were 2 weeks ago. There are some still not up yet, some just peeking through, but that's natural in a garden. We are going to be having bloom here in, I'd say, at least another week. And we'll point out those that'll be blooming in a week or so. Mainly they'll be the Fernleaf peonies, which bloom earlier, and these are the very early ones. Today's May 2nd, and so probably about the next second week of May they'll be blooming. So it's just even nice to walk around to see what the names of them are and to stroll through and just see what's what. I guess the first peony we can talk about is Peonia tenuifolia, the single, which is this one right here. It is a Fernleaf peony. I don't know if you can focus in on it real close. You can see the buds on it. It normally gets about 24 inches high. This is its second year of growth, so it'll still get bigger yet, as all of them will. But it's a Fernleaf one, and it's red. It's a real pretty brilliant red color, and it's single.
Will they keep
yellow center and one row of petals?
Will they keep getting taller after they bloom?
Yeah, this will get a little bit bigger yet. It'll get Itoba down there is only 12 inches. This one's 24, so it's twice the size of that Fernleaf down there.
So we'll get to that.
Then the next one that will be blooming, yeah, we'll get to that one down there in just a minute. That should be blooming possibly by the end of next week will be Mary Mayshine, which is a taller Fernleaf peony, and the proportion of the leaves to the size of the plant, the leaves are not as ferny as this one over here and those over there, but it's still classified as a Fernleaf one. This one's 30 inches, Mary Mayshine, beautiful one. Again, it's single. They'll be in the red category, crimson, carmine, the pink, dark pink category. They'll all be kind of same. Category, but in different shades of red. And then we have another, should we keep walking this way, yes, do we? This one right here with the 3 stakes. Somebody stepped on it, smashed it down, and it goes to show what damage happens in a public garden, I guess, but you know, it's what happens, I guess. It's too bad, but it does. This one here we think may have botrytis. Fungus. It went down on us, and so I've just put some copper fungicide on it to hopefully stop it. And it's one that possibly froze back this spring too, because it had growths coming on it earlier in the season. It's called Doreen, which is a single pink with the big yellow poof center. This one is another Fernleaf right here. I think it's a lighter shade, and it'll be blooming later on next week, more towards probably the weekend, and in another week from today maybe. This one is, I forget right offhand, what is it, Stevie?
Early bird.
Early bird, and it's an early one as well.
Can you tell from the buds kind of, you know, when you start?
Yeah, the buds are not showing color on this one.
Right. So
and it might be the location too because of the trees. It gets a little more shade, and those are a little more out in the sun, so that will affect your blooming too, as well as night temperatures and all.
Can we show a little bit about how we're protecting these babies here that are just so...
Yeah, this is a Goldilocks. This is a very expensive peony, and it's just coming through. It's yellow. It's a real dark yellow one. And this one and Elsa sass behind it are being protected. We put bark around them so people won't step on them, and hopefully that'll... And of course we got the cages around them so that lets people know that they're fragile right now. When peonies are in this stage right here, like right here, they're very, as most people probably know, they're fragile. They'll snap off, and the least little bit of wind can break them. But when those leaves get to fanning out and everything and spreading out, they get to be tougher. And they can withstand a little bit of abuse, a little more. But right now, they're kind of in a touchy state, and they can snap off pretty easily.
Maybe we could explain to our viewers that we have bed F and bed E and bed B. And
yeah, okay. This is bed A right here, this little bed. And it has a Fernleaf peony, a Japanese Fernleaf right here, which is pink. And then we have bed B, which is this long one with the daffodils and that orange rock. Then we have bed C, which is the one by the juniper. Then the one way down there is bed D, and this triangle is bed E. And the wall here, the uphill one, is bed F. So when we talk about beds, we'll be A, B, C, D, E, and F.
And that way we don't have to, this is peony number 227. It just gets to be too much.
We do it by bed. This is a new fernleaf peony, new peony, herbaceous peony, right here.
What's herbaceous mean for those?
Herbaceous means that it doesn't have any woody stems. It comes up from the ground, and they're all real pliable, bendy, kind of herb-like stems. That one's getting tough.
Nice.
I'll show you a tree peony. You know the story on this one. This one came from Michigan just this last week. It was sent in honor of Howard and ChinWon. It's a very dark pink peony, which originally came from China.
Yes, yes. So Howard and ChinWon are they're happy that we got to have a peony garden by using their name. They don't feel at all smug about this, but they've had a peony garden up in the Rattlesnake for 60 plus years. And so they're experts and great lovers of peonies, so we just sort of adopted them. And ChinWon in Korea went to school, high school, with, I think her name is Yuming, I might be wrong, but she lives in Ann Arbor, and they were high school classmates. And now they're not spring chickens exactly, so they're both happy to be alive and with their spouses. So all four of those people in the relationships and marriage are still alive. So Yuming wanted to send this peony, and the story ChinWon can tell better, but it has something to do with a gentleman from the United States who was working in China when some kind of civil war, or perhaps the Cultural Revolution, broke out. And this gentleman was basically having to get out for his own safety, or maybe he was expelled. I don't know. Sometime we'll get ChinWon down here to tell us the story while we're doing these, and that would be great. But she knows this peony from its birth, you might say, because this gentleman, neither of them knew him, but he ended up in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with this peony in his pocket. Basically, he took a few roots of it. It's a very beloved peony. So it's an unofficial addition. It's an emigrant from, it emigrated from China.
And immigrated into our country.
It's an immigrant here. And so, anyway, he had no money, and so to get a little bit of money, he would sell starts eventually from these peony roots. And he would not have the money to buy a booth at the farmer's market, apparently, in Ann Arbor, Michigan, if I'm correct. So he would just stand outside the market and sell for $10 each, and they were worth it because it's a very unnamed but renowned and beloved peony, and it's going to be dark pink.
Very dark pink.
And it already has buds on it, I think.
Yeah. Now we planted this early last week.
Here's the buds for this.
They may blast. The buds may blast. We hope not, but they may. Probably if you keep it wet for a few days.
So yeah, so can I ask you about this, just a question?
The Fernleaf
peony?
peony?
You said it was Japanese Fernleaf, but is that just its name, or is there something about...
I don't know. If it must be wild from Japan, or it's not a hybrid, I don't think.
We got a little limp.
I sprayed it, yes. There was one that was broken off. Somebody broke one off, and then there was one that was limp too. So I put some copper fungicide on it the other day. Okay. And it seems to have helped it, I think. Notice part of it's dark red and part of it's real green. So it's interesting. And I don't know how tall this one gets.
And there are buds on it, right?
Yeah, they're buds. There were buds on, 2 buds on the one. There was a bud on this one that was broken and a bud on another one. So it had 4. Now it's down to 2. This one here is Early Scout, which is another short peony, very early, but notice it's not fernleaf, and it is not going to bloom this year. But it's known for having very characteristic dark red stems. They eventually lighten up as it grows, but coming out it's very dark.
I
but
love
it's called,
the sound of the trains coming through.
But it's Early Scout.
And we put it here in part because it doesn't get huge, so it'll be a nice welcome from any direction. And
we also wanted one that was early, but not a fernleaf. So not all early peonies are fernleaf, but most of them are.
And not all fernleafs are early?
Yeah, I think all fernleafs are pretty early. Yeah, I don't know of any that are late yet.
That's going to be on the midterm exam.
Here's some more another example of, we think, botrytis. And I did treat it. and it seems like it's helped it, but it just fell over, just went over. And there is a little rot down there, and so, and it had it last year. Yeah, coral sunset, and so we hope that this will do it. We put it on last year too, the treatment. I may have to do it again, so.
Is it true that
don't mess with it too much.
If we take away this stuff, we might let the soils get drier and healthier or something?
That would help, yeah. We have one down here. I've got to go get some more. We're out of the copper fungicide.
People who are also experts at peonies will keep us informed as well, and vice versa.
Now this peony on the end here, I don't know, it might be too early to tell about the foliage of morning lilac, but it's an ito, and that means it's a cross between an herbaceous and a tree peony. And it has tree peony-like foliage, but the herbaceous stems of an herbaceous peony. That is an ito. And the flowers are different, and when they bred them for all kinds of different colors. And this one's an ito right here. You'll notice it's got somewhat of a ferny leaf foliage, but not as ferny leaf as early bird and fernleaf species over there in Mary May shine.
By the way, we're also working toward having a sign that's going to be right here, but everything is in flux right now with COVID, and so the sign won't be here right away for this coming week or maybe even this season. But we're going to figure out a way that everybody that wants can dial up or go to a website or something to look at this detailed C1, C2, C3, C4, B1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's a logic to each bed. And then there's also going to be available a map. And so when this sign is done, there'll be like a real estate plexiglass holder for everybody to take a look at the brochures and walk around. But there is signage that is going to be updated, I hope by Mother's Day. And we have, each peony has a number and it has a name.
And we'll have newer signs. These are just temporary again. So.
Right, but they help.
This was always, for some reason, the first peony to come up, not the first one to bloom, but pink Hawaiian coral. I think we talked about that last time, about how it just forms this bush really nice.
But now people can see the difference. You know?
People can see the difference on how, in 2 weeks' time. But this was the first one to come, and it was last year too. And this is the Peonia peregrina, the very old species from the Mediterranean. It just forms a nice, perfect mound. It's a single one too, but the flowers are more cup-shaped on it. But it's a species, wild.
This is B, I'm looking for it,
B
1768. 1768, before the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, and it has its buds coming, but they're small yet, and it'll be, yeah.
But this one, did you say, and maybe before we said it, so it's a reminder, the hills of Turkey and surrounding in
Mediterranean
the Mediterranean
region.
Sea.
Yeah.
So it was at home there, and a British horticulturist found it, you might say, even though all the Turkish people knew it for centuries. And he took it back to England and nurtured, and this is still the same rootstock, so nothing has changed. It's original.
Okay, now there are roughly 5, 6, 7, Steve, peonies that are species that are wild in nature. That one being one, peregrina. Brownie eye over here is a native to our region.
We'll come to that.
And we'll come down to that one, and then. This one over here is a species, and that one over there is a species. They're only roughly, that's interesting, they're only roughly 30, they say 30 to 40, maybe no more than 50 wild peonies in the world. Russia, they're in Russia, the Mediterranean region. We have China, Japan. That one we think maybe might be Japan, that Japanese fernleaf. I don't know for sure where we got it, they didn't know that if it was wild or not, but we think maybe it might be. Yeah, Japan, China, Russia. Russia has a beautiful pink one that's, I'd love.
Set up in Siberia?
Siberia. And I want to get it in the worst way. I don't know how we can ever get it, but they're just, you don't find them on the market. You know, peonies have a hard time, well, they do and they don't, but by seeds, propagating by seeds. They're easier for divisions, to do it for divisions, and that's why some of them are so expensive. You can't just take these seeds and just throw. Although we did have that friend in Boise who's reseed all over, but they don't reseed back to the original plant, or the same as the.
They cross-pollinate.
They cross and they become unknown, wild, single things. They don't always form back. It's, you got to cross, and that's. But they just don't. They don't cross as much, I guess. They just don't.
So I've learned a lot through Gary, and he knows way more than I'll ever know about these, but I learned about the Chinese peony that has become, in effect, one of the parents of many of the hybrids that we'll see in this garden, in fact. So it's got such strength. It's called Peonia lactiflora. Maybe you could tell a little.
It's white. Now it's too soon to actually be able to explain what a lactiflora is.
Right.
Lactiflora basically means that they have side buds from the tip, from the ends. This is not a lactiflora because there are no side buds there. And you wait till when you get older, and we'll talk about lactiflora later on.
See some actual blooms.
When you see some actual blooms, there'll be side blooms on the stems. Shirley Temple down here is a little bit, we can see it a little bit on that one. It's a lactiflora, but it also has just terminal buds too, only one.
So the original lactiflora, I learned from reading, means white flower, basically.
White, yes.
White. The color of milk, lacta, like lactose. And so now all these hybrids that are all different colors in the world, they might, one of their genetic origins may be that particular Chinese lactiflora peony, which is thousands of years old, but it's a species, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's an original peony. So you'll read in all the catalogs that say this particular peony is the parent of many of these hybrids. So because it had side buds and not, these are like one bloom per stem, one bloom per stem. That's all you will ever get. But many of these ones we see in the
Shirley Temple down here, we'll see this one, Steve. It shows the lactiflora in it. And it is a white peony, I mean, you know.
But a lot of them are pink.
A lot of them are pink, yes, yes.
Is Festiva Maxima a lactiflora?
I think it is, yes it is. Yeah. Now right here is Itoba. This is the shortest peony that we've got in the garden. It's only 12, it's supposed to be 12 inches high. And people say, well, it's already just 12 inches, and it's showing breaking. You'll see here where it's showing, it'll be blooming definitely by next week, but it's the one that has the red, it looks like rhubarb stems.
Is this the first one to bloom? No, Chalice was.
Chalice was last year, but that one's been chewed up by the deer. Deer normally don't eat them. But this one will be the first one this year, and this is Itoba. And again, it's a fernleaf one, single, red, Carmen red. And it's, yeah. And this one here is Peonia tenuifolia, and it's will be a little taller. This is 12 inches. This will be 18, I believe, or 20.
By the time it's done.
Yeah, and it'll probably be blooming about the same time. It looks to me like the buds aren't as big on it right now. It'll probably be just a shorter behind it than this one.
These are both, did you say singles?
Yeah, both singles. And in the red category. Be worth it to come. This will be the one that probably will be blooming by next week, so you want to come and see it. And a lot of your fern leaves, not always, but they die back when they're done blooming. The foliage will die back. These didn't last year. No. And if we can keep them green all year, which is a great thing, that makes them, the clump healthier. But it's okay if they die back.
Now we know that all the people coming for Mother's Day will not pick a flower and take it home for Mother or Grandma.
We want to leave it for other people to see, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, down here, I want to get to a tree peony. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah. Now, people won't be stepping into the garden, but we know our way, so maybe you could, or I could.
You go ahead, Steve.
We know. Between the peonies, one reason we have to know where everything is, there is kinnikinnick, which is going to become a carpet in the garden. So the mulch will be doubly protecting against weeds by having this, how do you say it?
Kinnikinnick. And we looked it up too in the dictionary to be sure, because we heard of knick-knick and it's
knick-knack.
Yeah, and it is kinnikinnick, the pronunciation.
So here's a tree peony, and the bark is just like a...
It's a woody stem, and that was like that all winter, except for it didn't have the leaves, of course. They do drop their leaves, but they do have a more finely cut leaf than your regular herbaceous.
And so these leaves are very different, unique. And the Ito plants that are a cross between a tree and herbaceous, which are those sturdy but flimsy vegetative stems. This is, they will often, the Itos will often have leaves.
They always have the tree peony leaf, but they die back to the ground. Itos die back to the ground, just like your herbaceous ones.
Close up of how this is.
Well, we can't over here. We've got a tree peony right here that, two of them right here that he can get a picture of the, right here. Now,
go ahead.
And here's an Ito right here too, Bartzella. I don't know if you can see, but this is lactiflora in the sense, and this is partially, see how the side buds are, but also because this terminal looks like it's blasting. So it's got two side buds. See them there? It's got the terminal and two sides. So it has lactiflora. This one has a terminal and three side buds actually. The terminal will bloom first, and then the side buds will come on. Some people like to have bigger flowers, anything, and with roses and with anything, dahlias, you can take, and I'm not going to, but you can take these side ones and cut them off, and then you'll get a bigger terminal.
This is getting ready to...
Yeah, that's Mackinac Grand, isn't it? Yes. That's a very nice bush.
It's not Bartzella?
No, Bartzella's right here.
Oh, okay.
See, you can tell by the foliage.
Okay.
That's not as cut.
I can.
Yeah, this is Bartzella. Bartzella's an Ito. Beautiful yellow one. Very popular one. But a hard one to get to bloom. I hope it blooms for us this year.
We're going to study up a little more on the Ito because we're not hybridizers, but there's something not only that the tree peony and the herbaceous peonies were crossed, they had to sort of be genetically spliced. And this happened in like late 40s. And it almost disappeared from the earth. This Japanese hybridizer figured it out. He broke the code. He did the chromosome layover or whatever. And he created something that had never happened on the earth. And as I said, it almost went into oblivion because of post-war, World War II. And so when it came to people's attention that these peonies needed to come back to people's attention, it started a whole new world of color and beauty and strength in the stems. And then all these leaves, like, did you tell again, is that similar leaves to
Well, Itos generally don't fall over either. Their stems are generally tough.
Right, but this has that tree peony.
Yeah.
Sort of, almost looks like a sharp maple tree leaf.
Yeah, Manitoba maple, look, yeah.
Very serrated edges of the leaves.
Yeah. Okay, now over here is the one of two wild peonies in North America. This one grows in the Pacific Northwest, or in the Northwest. It's supposed to be in Montana, but I don't know. This little bitty guy right here, it's its second year here, so it is coming. And it was...
Can you tell us the name?
Peonia brownii. It has a nodding shaped flower, and it's only about...
What's that mean?
Upside down.
Is that like a pendant?
And the reproductive part of the plant is probably more showy than the petals, than the color, the ray florets around the outside of it.
It's not known as a beautiful flower.
No, it's burgundy and green and not very pretty, but it's unique, and it is a peony. You find a lot of them, and I want to go someday over by Hell's Canyon in Idaho. All along there.
Up on the cliffs, just above the canyon.
They like the pine forests, and they don't like, I think I told you this last time, they don't like water after they're done blooming. When they're done blooming, no water on those guys. I guess it can kill them. And we were just great. We were good. We took the water from it, and it hardly got any water last year, and it seems to be doing fine. This spring when it came out, we thought it was kind of yellowish green, and so I did put a little fertilizer on it, and it seems to have brought the color out a little bit. I think I'll water it again. We watered it the other day, but in the spring, see, it hasn't bloomed yet, so we probably still can get away with the watering of it.
You know what would be fun is after we get going with all these blooms in one of our weekly shows to bring Howard and ChinWon. ChinWon is full of stories about the ones that they have in their garden. And that would be fun.
Nice to have pictures of theirs so they can talk about it. Now here's a typical, and you could notice this is a tree peony. And this is one, see the woody stems? This is the one I wanted to show you. This was a beautiful one last year. And it's in the shade of this. It's not going to help it any, but it is, that's where it is. And it is going to bloom again this year. It has 2 on it. It sometimes takes tree peonies a long time to get established. But see the wood on that? That was there all winter. And we've got a cage around those because we don't want people to come up and break them off. Because you break them off and it will ruin them.
Gary, was this wood already here this spring?
It was there. It was there last year. Yeah, and there'll be new come up from the bottom, and that'll become woody this year, this fall or whatever.
That's vegetative.
That'll turn to wood.
That'll turn to wood.
And some of it will die, and you have to prune it and everything else. This is also a woody one. You can see the wood on it. See here. But it's also coming from the base, and the reason why I know those 2 are okay if they come from the base is because they're their own root tree peonies. Now you can get tree peonies that are grafted, just like hybrid roses can be grafted, and they're not as good. We've got a grafted peony over there that died and it's gone, and we have one down here that's grafted and we think is gone. Grafted ones will grow. I can show you some grafted ones down here, but the own root ones, which are from Adelman's in Oregon, are much better
because they're all the way through. They're the same.
Yeah, they're the same all the way through.
So this doesn't exist in South America. It's only the northern.
What? Brownie eye, back to brownie eye. It only lives in the Northwest, and I've never found it in Montana. I've never seen it in Montana. I'd like to, if anybody knows.
They say a little bit in the elevations above 3,000 feet, which we are, right? And then back in the mountains, sort of interspersed in the pine trees.
But they got to get the sun, yeah.
Right.
But it would be worth it to see it at least when it does bloom, if it ever does here. Be kind of neat. Here's a grafted tree peony, which is doing well. The purple one is doing very well, but it's grafted. If it were to die back at the top, it would be probably, and what happens, people say, well, what happens when they die back? They will come back, but they often come back as herbaceous. And I'll show you on one down here what that means, but they don't come back as their original. Just like a rose, you graft onto old rootstock. It's usually a wild rose of some sort that they graft onto. But this one is grafted, and it's purple. This one's white, and for some reason in the tree peony world, white ones are hard to keep alive. And so I think we've lost our white one. And there's a yellow one. They're all tree peonies, all root. We hope this one, I would like to see this one come from the bark, and that would tell me that it's still, going to be white. But if it comes up from the ground, it's more than likely not going to be.
So it won't even be a tree, you mean? It'll just be...
No, it'll be herbaceous.
Huh.
It'll be
because
herbaceous.
If it's grafted,
It'll probably be an old-fashioned single pink, like Sparkling Star, which we lost. Yeah. I'll show you that, and that's why down here, Steve, I was concerned about this tree peony down here, because it was coming up from below. This is the tree peony, Ron, right here, that if you can look, Steve gets mad at me when if it does not have that foliage, this type of foliage, see where they're coming from below the graft, you want to tear that off. I'm going to
see what it'll do, because it won't hurt anything.
Right. It's going to bloom, but it'll be single pink. And if you let it grow, it'll become an herbaceous bush like this, and it'll overtake the tree part.
So the root is herbaceous.
Yeah.
And the graft is the tree.
Right, the tree. And if it's coming up below that, you see it.
So it's not genetically...
And if you leave it, it'll overtake the graft. You know how they do all these kinds of apples, graft apples on, some of the grafts are maybe not as good as... That's another thing when botanists or whatever do the grafting or whatever, sometimes they're not strong. And it's not, it's just not strong, and therefore it's a weaker plant. So that's why you want to look. You
might invite people that every week's going to be a whole different set of blooms from now till mid-July.
Yeah, there's from now, the first part's going to be probably starting next week. The first bloom, and from there'll be something coming just about every week. I look for Shirley Temple to be blooming pretty soon, shortly after that. But we did put Shirley Temple in. She's normally a later bloomer, but we put it in just the other day, Steve and I did, in place of another. But there are going to be some others that are going to be blooming. We have one source I looked up had 4 different blooming seasons: very early, mid-season, and late. And then another one has very, very early, very early, early mid, maybe that's the, early mid, then late, then very late season.
And then other categories are week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, which is the easiest.
But once they start blooming, people will want to come and see them.
And some of these may be out of phase just because of the second year they came up later than they might.
Right. We have more than 230 plants, but we have a bunch that are duplicated. Mrs. FDR is duplicated. Scarlet O'Hara, there are 3 of those in here. There are 3 coral charms. There are 3 coral sunsets. There are 5 of the Stickney peonies that they donated to us.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Stickneys?
Well, I understand that they were homesteaders here, weren't they? Or early people who had farm, and they knew Howard and ChinWon, and they brought these 5 white peonies over because they wanted them in the garden. They aren't named. They just wanted them in honor of Howard and ChinWon. Want to know if we would.
So when ChinWon comes to visit, we'll have her tell us about all that.
Yeah, those are the ones by the pine tree there, those 5 white ones, and they're going to bloom. And let me tell you, 3 of them were very small roots, hardly anything to them when we planted them, and man, they've took off this year. They're definitely tried and true. And you do have that in the peony world. You have some that are tougher than others.
Would it be fair to say, Gary, that these are way better and more vibrant and vigorous than last year?
Oh yeah, the plants are much bigger now. Okay, well last year, probably about the biggest, they were a lot like this with only just one or two sprigs, branches, plants coming up.
So it might be fair to point out to guests that would like to come here in person that Saturday and Sunday there's no cost at all for parking, either here in this main lot or even over at the Prescott House, except for the disability parking places are always protected. But Monday through Friday during the business hours, I think there's a $1 per hour maybe. It's not working right now, the machine, so maybe
they say they're still charging down there, but not on weekends.
Right, not on weekends, so that's a good time to just come. And maybe at some point you can do a photo of the parking lot there, because people that don't want to do steps have zero access.
And you know, I look up here at the garden run. I don't know if you could photograph up here. What's pretty about it is you see all the burgundy. They're in the stage now of lots of burgundy showing and lots of green. The variations of their growth stages they're in. When they all come up, they're all burgundy. But see how some are still burgundy and some are in their green, full green. Look at that one over there, that Mackinac Grand, Steve. Isn't that a huge thing?
Which one?
The one by the juniper over here, just a huge, perfect spot for it.
Right.
You know, and I like how that peregrina forms kind of like a canopy.
And so maybe we can remind our guests, because they see me traipsing through the garden, that it's not for everybody to walk into the garden.
Right. You can smell them and you can touch them and all that kind of stuff, but please don't pick or please don't walk in the garden, because we do get damage.
Pear trees from Clarence Prescott's pear tree orchard up here on the hill leading to the...
They should be in full bloom here, I would say, next week. Now, last year, the pear trees, it's kind of like with the apples. Every other year they produce. And the pear trees did not produce last year. And it was kind of nice. We didn't have a lot of pears to have to pick up. But when we were planting this the year before, we had pears everywhere. And the deer come in, I'm sure, eat them. You know, we wish they'd eat more. We even had some people ask if they can come and collect the pears. And I said, I don't care if you collect them or not. They're not real big.